you at? You in your Porsche or whatever you posted on Instagram?
No, I was caught up in some errand running.
Oh, well, thank you for your time. I won't hold you if you got errands to run.
No, you good.
I've been well. How have you been?
I've been great, Georgette. How have you been?
I've been phenomenal. No complaints. Taking it one day at a time, Face, to be honest with you. This pandemic has been taking me out bit by bit every now and then.
I mean, I liked your post earlier. I didn't know that
Did
you
you? Were
like.
you surprised by that? You didn't see any of that?
I mean, I didn't know that you like decided to become a full-time entrepreneur and took some like woman in entrepreneurship classes. I didn't know you were doing all that.
Oh, my actual post that I wrote for the description of the episode. Yeah, I have to say shout out to my digital marketing consultant, because he was like, you need to, when you talk about your episodes, you need to connect. And I know you're an entrepreneur, and I have been trying to do different things during the pandemic, and it hasn't been easy. And so kind of a perfect transition, right? So picking up where we left off, you're a multi-hyphenate, more than just a recording artist. You also have your own business. But now we're in the times of a pandemic phase. So what has shifted for you during these times, if anything? And how have you managed to keep going and staying afloat?
I mean, what I shifted during these times is so like everything in life, not everything, but there's seasonality and a lot of opportunities in life, right? And so you have your real estate boom, you have your internet boom, you have your tech booms, you have you have your content creation kind of boom because everybody's at home. Now everybody wants to be a YouTuber or Instagram influencer. Everybody's kind of looking at that, in that avenue just because they have a lot of free time. So it's like now we're in the midst of a pandemic. A lot of the airways are oversaturated because people have more time in their hands, and with that more time, everybody's becoming a little bit more entrepreneurial, and getting into content creation and delivery. So it's an interesting time because I don't necessarily know what that's going to mean for brand value, right? Because people don't sit on content as long anymore, right? And so I see an interesting shift in how a lot of these micro brands monetize, right? Because even when it comes to monetization via branding, right, brand endorsements or co-branded activities or whatever they may be, a lot of those dollars are not even going out right now just because of the pandemic, right? And so you have a lot of creators wanting to create so they can have an income at home through YouTube, checks from YouTube, checks from, influencer posts, people post, and you pay people to post, that's a really big business now. Everybody's getting into the, paid post kind of game,
Right.
Shout outs, send me $50 and I put you on my IG live as a business model. And so it's just because a lot of bigger brands are pulling their budgets because they don't really have the budget to do that anymore. A lot of entrepreneurial content creators are taking it into their own hands and kind of building business models around their fan base. While you have a lot of other people who don't really have fan bases really trying to climb that ladder in an oversaturated market. Because I don't know if you really paid attention to organic reach or growth, right? Even the amount of followers that actually see your posts, it's next to none these days, right? Everything is paid media driven these days. It's or influencer. You can have 2,000 people and Instagram and Facebook will only show it to 50 of them.
Right.
It's just a part of the game, right? And so it's just I don't know. It's just a part of the game, and so it's just I feel one of the easier ways that a lot of people are kind of staying relevant throughout this pandemic, right, is newsjacking, which is a marketing tactic, right? Newsjacking, in which you kind of do something that aligns with the news, right? So your content gets picked up with whatever is going on, right? So you have all them rappers making the Black Lives Matter videos, music videos, Black Lives Matter, the baby, everybody making their own version of a Black Lives Matter. That's called newsjacking, right? They're trying to ride the wave of the news in order to create some publicity for themselves. And I feel right now that's probably one of the easiest ways as a content creator to break through is to kind of newsjack, right? um, create content around what's trending, essentially.
I mean, you have your company Run the Play. Have you? And I know from the conversation that we had and the interview, you Run the Play wasn't just a label; it was like marketing and working with artists and things of that nature. What are you doing differently, or did you have to do anything differently because of the pandemic hitting? And then also because of the music industry changing, that also kind of shifted a lot of different things and the way things are happening now.
So, right, in terms of you're right, because when you're running a publishing company or you're creating music, one of the first things you want to do is you want to play some music, right? You want to monetize your music, and so with production being down, visual production, I mean, movies, TV, film, right? With those calendars being pushed back, and because of COVID, you have less supply of TV and film to picture music to, right? Because nobody's shooting, right? And so, in terms of music, this is like maybe the perfect time for people to really build up their content catalog, right? That's what I feel like. That's one of the biggest things you can be taking out of this time is really building up a content catalog, right? Really building your content up, because, like I said, there are opportunities, right? There are opportunities. It's just that there's just so much news around.
It's tough. I know
it's very tough. It's like you can see, especially when you're so inundated with being on social media all day, which a lot of people are these days. You can see one thing you really like, and by the end of the day, you totally forgot that you even saw that post or whoever that person was. That was a really good video I saw earlier. Who's that? It's just one of those environments. So the pivot I made in terms of music was just kind of building up a catalog, right? For when production really opens up, now I have a host of things that I can actually pitch.
It was so great that you said that, because one of our questions to you was going to be, what insight can you offer? And I actually been having this conversation with my guy about building up content, right? I had released Black and Nuanced in HD, where I had played around with doing some video versions of my podcast episodes. But around the time I released it, Black bodies were getting killed. I mean, it almost seemed like on a weekly basis. So that got lost, right? And so now I'm going to eventually do a re-release of it. But to your point, creating content to kind of have it baked, ready to go when it feels like it's the right time is actually an interesting idea. And I think because I don't know what the other alternative would be, right? Production is slowly starting back up, but no one's really interested in spending that money like they used to. And then people don't want to be in large crowds anymore. I was just on set earlier this week for work, some freelance stuff, and it's just a whole different ballgame now. It doesn't look the same, it doesn't feel the same, and it costs more, right? For certain things that you want or certain outputs that you want.
Right, because in terms of production, I'm sure insurance costs have went up. We have other people on set. You got to pay insurance.
We're paying for tests. We're paying for everything.
Yeah, so I can only imagine. But I understand your grievances, because that happened with my particular release. I released.
What was the release, and what happened for your release? What happened?
So I released the single Friday, March 15th. That was the day we went into lockdown. I was like, fuck, COVID news everywhere. I'm like, yo, COVID news everywhere. And then I released the music video in June, the Friday of June, and literally that Friday, oh, we're going back into lockdown. COVID surges. I'm like, yo, it's just you can't escape the news, right? You can't escape the news. So it's that's what I'm saying. It's an interesting environment, right? And I feel like it's one of those. It's also a great testing environment, because you have so many eyes on social media right now. It's great to kind of play with your brand, test your content, see what works, see what doesn't, and then slowly start to scale that with all the free time that allows to have. Right?
You've been in business for what? A few years, probably longer than a few, right? For the one thing I did, and I could definitely be honest about it, was I had created I had formed my production company 5 years ago. Cool. That was going to be my company. If you want to do business with the brand Georgette, this is how I'm going to get paid. But when the pandemic hit, I got laid off. I didn't really process being laid off. I was like, oh, I'm going to start a second company. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to get clients. I'm going to work for myself. And I had this conversation with my cousin. We were really talking about this whole productivity obsession where people felt like they had to continue to do something. And so, long story short, in the description of your episode that people can see on IGTV, YouTube, or Facebook, I was like, I started this company. I'm not doing anything with this company anymore. Like, I have actively decided. But then I also realized that I wasn't even in a space to emotionally and mentally go after the things that I thought I wanted to go after with such gusto. So for someone that is going after entrepreneurship, which I feel like from the conversation that we had on After Dark, that wasn't really an option for you. One, how important was it for you to have your own? But two, what insight can you offer people that are struggling to even see the light during these times with their own business?
I mean, you have to think about the opportunity cost of time, right? And so in economics, there's the common knowledge, right? Opportunity cost of time is like the time value of money, right? So when you think about the time value of money and what is for gold, right? So like you can, because most people think in the short term, right? So you can say, oh, in the short term, like I can get this gig and, I can make 50, 60 grand a year doing, whatever work you want to do, right? Working for somebody, right? But also be at the whims of the economic environment, right? And so, like, let's say you were working 5 years and you had some of your money tied up in a 401k, 2009, and all of a sudden, not only are you fired, but like the stocks crash and like 70% of your money is gone, right? 70% of your money is gone. You don't really have any savings anymore. Just put all the 401k and now you're fucked. Basically, it's like starting all over again. When it comes into the opportunity cost of time, and the reason I mention is because it's kind of my outlook on life, right? The time valuation of money. And so it's just like you could be safe, right, and make 40, 50, or try to be safe as possible, but there's no such thing as safety.
Right.
And I think people are really realizing that now, like, ain't shit safe. So if there's no such thing as safety, why not bet on yourself, right? If there's really no such thing as safety, why not bet on yourself? But in terms of the opportunity cost of time, it's just like, okay, you could take the 50 grand job, right? Or you could slug it out, and because it may not take that long. You can think about your outlook on your business, right? You can say, well, my business, typical businesses, in video production, once I get rolling, I could probably make 250, 300K a year off recurring clients. And so opportunity cost of time would be like, oh, well, I'm only making 20 grand over this last 6 months or 2 years, 40 grand, trying to build my clients. But, maybe the third year, right, or the fourth year, you get that 250, right? You finally build your business up to that 250. And so when you calculate the opportunity cost of time, right, so it's like it took you 3 years to make 250, but you made 20 very low, like you made 20 the first 2 years, right? You're struggling trying to figure it out, right? So that's 250 plus 40 is 290. So 290 divided by 3, let's say 300. So you're making 100K a year, right? That's the opportunity cost of time when you think about it in a long-term perspective, as opposed to 50K of something safe, right? 50K, in the third year you only make 50K. So by the third year you would have accumulated 150K. But if you would have just stuck it out those 2 years, right, of just trying to figure it out, the third year you made 250, 300. So like the opportunity cost of time, you were actually making more, even though it felt like you weren't, because you weren't. Technically, like the long-term goal was that you made more money in the long term. So like I think like long term, right, the opportunity cost of time, like would I make more money in 3 years doing what I am doing? So like I feel like that's what you should. If that's the outlook, that if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should really have that kind of outlook. Like it may not happen today, but when it does hit, it'll make up for all the years it didn't hit. You know what I'm saying? And so like,
oh yeah,
it may take 2 years, but by the time it does hit, it'll make up 6 or 7-fold for all the years you felt like you weren't getting paid what you were worth.
What's so crazy? I've never, well, one, I actually need to really do the work, like actually like mapping certain things out, but I've never thought about it like that, because I've had moments recently over the past couple of weeks where I was like, I need to dabble in applying to jobs in addition to other things, because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen anymore, and you know, rent and all these other things don't pay for themselves. But you actually make a great point, because when I started thinking about how easy it was for a company to let me go, and I was like, I also felt like I was capping my earning potential. They're going to pay you what they want to pay you, not what you're worth, not what your value is, not what you're putting in.
And especially in time like this, they're gonna overwork you because they don't
Yes.
got no money.
Well, and
Like,
then they're not paying for you to be in a space either. So they're like, they don't need to necessarily pay you all this money. But I think that's an interesting concept. And so then what about those that are going through the motions? Well, why was it important for you, because you are a multi-hyphenate singer, songwriter, marketer, you know, all these things that you do? Why was it important for you to make sure you had your own business versus going the traditional route?
It's always been a part of me. Like, I've always had like this thing with like authority. Like, I don't like people telling me what the fuck to do. Like,
right.
It never works. It just doesn't sit well in my spirit. Like, I've tried it. I've tried sucking it up and going to work for people that you don't like or who you know don't fucking like you, and you go there every day. You make it a pretty penny, but you work at 13 hours a day. You're stressed out. You can't work out. Like, you can't do no self-care, no self-love. And so it's like, you're making money, but you can't even really take care of yourself. Like,
making money at the expense of yourself.
Yeah, at the expense of yourself. Like, what's the point of making money and you don't even have time to take care of yourself? That makes no sense, right? And so it was one of those situations that was like, I just couldn't do it no more. It's just like, especially because when I did do it, I was commuting too. It was like 45 minutes there, then I get off at 7 o'clock, and it's 45 minutes back to the crib, and I was like, yo, this is a nightmare. like you know, like I said, like I was making a lot of money, but it was just like it's not worth. Like I said, if I'm going to work that hard, I'd rather work for myself. But I feel like for some people, like working at specific companies or corporations, like it's a great starting point. It's a great starting point, right? Because like your background, like now you really know you know the ins and outs of film production, right? And so now, like, you can't say it's all a waste, because mine wasn't a waste. Like, I learned a lot, right? And like I said, like they do in the streets, like you learn a lot, then you run off for the plug. Start your own shit. You run off. Okay, cool. I learned all this. Cool. I'm starting my own shit. I'm out. And that's what I did. I was like, that's how you do it. This is how the contracts get. All right, cool. Great. Perfect. All right, I'm out.
It's so true. No, I've taken a lot of the things that I've learned and then paired it with people that I know that know more than me, and have been creating my own things and finding ways to make it work for me within a budget. What has been one personal and then one professional revelation or career revelation that you've had during the pandemic?
A revelation during the pandemic.
You haven't had so many?
I mean, that's what I'm saying. I've had so many, it don't make any sense. And so, like, I could say, you know, the value of, like, relationships, right? Like, actually, like, it's funny because, like, the pandemic also exposed, like, the truth, the reality behind a lot of the relationships that you think or thought you had, right? Like, the true depth of them, right? The true depth of the relationships. Like, because, you know, it's easy to have relationships, like, when you're on the go, you're working, you're doing your corporate thing, you're spending the corporate car, you're having drinks, you're meeting with people, you're doing schmoozing, you're doing that. But, you know, like, when the pandemic hit and motherfuckers don't answer the phone, you know they ain't got shit else to do. They still responding 2 weeks later, 3 days later, you know, like, but it also makes you, it starts to make you appreciate, like, genuine connections, right? Genuine connections with people. But one of the other revelations also, like, the concept of, like, teamwork, like, not doing everything alone. It's like forcing, like, I feel like a lot of people always want to do things alone. They feel like they have to work alone, right? And so, like, especially during the pandemic, I felt like, of course, you know, it's great because a lot of people have been finding their own strength, right? Like, their own strength, right? Finding who you are, your own strength, standing in your own, you know, personal power, right? I feel like a lot of people have been learning to do that during the pandemic. But outside of that, I say the value of, like, teamwork, right? When you start working alone, right? You start to realize how valuable other people are when you start working alone, right? How truly valuable other people are around you. So I would have to say that.
That's dope. Yeah. You know, coupled with that, as far as the relationship, that one definitely is not lost on me. I think You know, I think for me, it's just been giving myself enough grace that if I'm not okay, I'm not okay, and also sitting with a lot of that. There's just been so many different things that I've been going through, and they've changed daily. And I know in the past, prior to just how you were saying, like we're always on the go. Well, I never had to sit with things long enough, right? Like I'd be on the plane to
Or
LA.
your own feelings, or your own insecurities, right? Or your own anxiety. This is a whole different game when you got to sit in the house with all of them emotions, right? And you're like,
Right,
it's a
the
lot.
eyes. I mean,
It's a
Gabe,
lot. I already know.
it took
You got to look
me
at yourself. You're like,
it
fuck.
took me out, and it's been taking me out. But now I've gotten to the place with like the meditation, the journaling, the reading, and then just even connecting with people that hold space for me. It's been helpful, but like that came at the tail end, and we're not even at the tail end, but from March until now, I feel like that's been happening like the past month or so for me, and so it's just
What,
been interesting.
a spiritual kind of elevation?
It has been,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I would say I felt that shift too around August.
Yeah. Yeah. That was my birthday
August,
month. It was just so many things happening.
yeah,
So,
I would say I felt that shift around August.
yeah. Okay. So, lastly, what's next for you as much as you can do in this pandemic? Like, what do you have going on? Music that you've released, all those things.
And so I'm re-pivoting my strategy. I'm going to shoot, right, maybe like 3 or 4 music videos. And so, but they're all going to be slated to release next year, right? So I'm going to probably re-release this music video and this single. Like, I'm going to try my best to try to navigate that. Also probably pay for a feature, right? Find a feature. Some type of,
Find a
that's
what?
what it is, a feature, right? That's
Oh,
another way to break through the noise, right? Co-branding. That'd be good for you too. Try to with your talk show, which
oh, for
co-branding, like
sure.
with other hosts, right? Co-branding.
Season 2.
That's a powerful tool right now too. So I would say, but in terms of co-branding, that's what a feature is co-branding. Right? So kind of looking for what kind of artist, prominent artist, right? Um, that would fit or align with my brand or whatever music I create.
Yes. And then when the world opens back up, you still owe me dinner because you volunteered.
I
So,
do owe you. I
pick
haven't
a coast.
forget.
You can come to New York. I can come to LA. If you gotta pick a coast.
Are you in Brooklyn right now? Or are you in Harlem?
No, I'm in Harlem.
Yeah,
I'm in
you a Harlem
Harlem.
vibe. You ain't the Brooklyn vibe. You Harlem vibe all day.
I am, but I started in Brooklyn when I first moved here almost 10 years ago.
But on Flatbush, where you at?
I was definitely in Flatbush. I mean, like the trenches of Flatbush.
Okay.
Yeah. I was an hour outside of the city. I had no idea. I just knew I was moving to New York. So, Face, how can they find you online and all the things?
You can find me on anywhere at Face of an Artist.
Okay.
My tag is unanimous across every platform. The same
Okay.
tag.
And that's your website as well.
YouTube too, everywhere.
That's what's up.
Gotta keep that branding consistent. You gotta keep it consistent.
Okay. Face, thank you so much. Dropping some gems. I know you got errands to run, so I appreciate you.
I
And
appreciate you, Georgette.
yeah, be safe out there, please. Wildfires and shit.
I know. I couldn't tell the difference between smog and smoke.
That's so crazy. That's so crazy. Well, you have a phenomenal night, evening, day, whatever it is in LA right now.
You too. You have a great night, Georgette.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.